Okay, good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started. It's just past the hour of 10 o'clock here, UK time. You are all very welcome to what is the first in a series of a week-long set of webinars, which we're delivering this week from itelligence. And they're coming under the umbrella of the S4 HANA-thon. So no prizes for guessing the core topic that we're going to be discussing this week. We decided to put together this set of webinars following our conference earlier on this year in May. We had a lot of presentations focused on S4, as you'd expect, because it is the key topic at the moment for many SAP customers. And we had many people requesting if we could update those sessions and rerun them. So what we've decided to do is take that stream from our conference earlier on this year and recreate it as a series of webinars all this week. So today, stage 1, Monday the 25th of September, is myself, Andy Steer, delivering advice for approaching S4 HANA, the itelligence point of view. Now, what we're intending to do within this webinar today is really to hopefully bring you up to date on what's going on in the world of S4 and prime you for the rest of the webinars this week. So that's the goal of today, and for the next hour or so, I hope to achieve that for you. Okay, so without further ado, for those of you who don't know me or haven't met me before, my name's Andy Steer, and I'm the Group CTO for itelligence here in the UK, and you can see some bits and pieces about me there. Please feel free to either email me or to contact me via Twitter, or you can find me on LinkedIn if you have anything that you want to follow up on following this session. Also, within the webinar today, you can of course ask any questions that you have via the QA panel or the chat panel. Feel free to do that. The session will also be recorded, and you will receive an email following today's webinar giving you access to the recording. Feel free to share that with any colleagues who you think would find this of value. Also, I did mention that this is part of a series of webinars this week, so of course you can still register for the following webinars that go for the rest of this week if you haven't done so already. And in case you haven't heard of itelligence before and this is your first experience with us, then there are some key stats there about our organisation. I won't go into too much detail there. Hopefully today's session will provide you with the information that you need about us. So, one thing I just wanted to share briefly before we get into talking about the agenda and covering off today's topics. Really, I wanted to just reinforce the levels of interest that we're seeing in these areas. So we had nearly 180 registrations for this morning's webinar. And interestingly, as you can see, spread from countries all around the world. Now, clearly, I would have expected the majority to be from the United Kingdom, being as this is being delivered by itelligence here in the UK. But I thought it was interesting to see that there's still a growing interest in S4 HANA. So hopefully, as I say, our series of webinars this week will help you to cover off the key topics that you need to understand in order to help you in your preparation for S4 HANA. So why should you listen to us? Why should you bother being interested in what itelligence have to say about S4 HANA? Well, I thought before we started, I'd share some key statistics with you just to help you understand where we are coming from as an organisation. And you can see at the top level there some key numbers around the level of projects and interactions that we're having. So we have well over 300 of our customers globally running HANA already within their environments. We have 130 active S4 HANA projects, and they are a mixture of both existing customers who are converting to S4, as well as net new name customers who are implementing, starting with S4. And you can see then a further breakdown on the generations of the product that we are seeing in our customer base. And as I said, you can also be comfortable that we have the full range of certifications and partner credentials in order to be able to help you and assist you with your S4 journey. Okay, so with that done, let's focus on the core topics for today's webinar. I wanted to keep it simple, so we're going to cover 3 topics. First off, we're going to go through the S4HANA 101. So let's be clear. Let's make sure that everybody is on the same page and understands what we're talking about when we talk about S4HANA, where it sits within SAP strategy, how it's evolved, what its purpose is, and what you can expect from further conversations around S4. That will then move us nicely into the middle section of the webinar, which is all about how you plan for S4HANA. So once you've got an understanding of what S4 is all about, how can you plan to get S4HANA into your organization? Now, we're not just talking about technical topics here. We're talking about how do you build business cases? How do you begin to understand the effect that considering S4HANA will have on your organization? And then finally, we'll summarize and make some recommendations for you that you can carry forward into your next stage of planning. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense for you. That'll probably take us through the next 55 minutes or so. So let's get started. HANA 101. Right, many of you hopefully will be aware, and you should all be aware, that S4HANA is not, technically speaking, a brand new product anymore. S4HANA launched February 2015. You may have seen the global webinar that was done by SAP at the time, live from the New York Stock Exchange with Bill McDermott and various other luminaries from SAP, recommending that everybody should adopt their new product, S4HANA. Well, that was 2.5+ years ago now. So what's been happening since then, and what's the current status with regards to S4HANA? Well, the first thing to understand is that S4HANA really is just a part of SAP's wider evolution of their solutions. Now, you may well have seen this diagram before, which was very popular probably over the last 12 months or so, with the idea being that you have the S4HANA digital core in the center there, bringing together business transactions and intelligent insights with the other perhaps newly acquired solutions from SAP, extending that digital core on the outside. And no surprises, most of those products around the outside are pure public cloud-based solutions. But you can also see the advent of the newer technology innovations here. So you can see blockchain, machine learning, and of course, HANA and the SAP Cloud Platform itself underpinning what's being done with the digital core. Now, if you've been watching and paying attention recently, you may also have seen an evolution of that presentation. And this is taken from some of the latest slideware that SAP are producing, where here you can see the so-called intelligent core at the center, delivering the core business capabilities that you'd expect to see within an ERP system, all delivered on top of the real-time foundation, which of course is managed from SAP HANA. And around that, the various products and service offerings that you can use to extend and deliver the modern digital type services within your organization. So what I want to go on and do today is really start to help you understand how this picture comes together, what S4HANA's part is in delivering that, and really how we've got to this stage where SAP are saying they have a digital transformation platform that will help you drive your business forward. So let's start the beginning of our 101, in-memory computing. Many of you will be aware, and we had it on one of the previous slides, that HANA itself as a technology underpins and fundamentally enables much of what SAP are doing in their modern platforms. But do you understand the difference between HANA and S4HANA? Let's start from the very beginning. HANA itself is all about leveraging in-memory computing. In fact, HANA is SAP's in-memory computing platform. And the reason why it is so important is encapsulated nicely here, I think, in this diagram. For many, many years, hardware has been evolving and innovating at an unprecedented rate. I'm sure many of you are aware of Moore's Law and what effect that has had. You need only cast your eyes probably to the desk that's in front of you and probably the mobile device that's sitting somewhere on that to be reminded of the fact that the mobile device you see has an infinite degree of computing power, more than probably the computer that you first started using on your desk when you began in the workplace. What was interesting though is that those innovations in hardware and those increases in performance capabilities have never really been leveraged correctly by enterprise software like SAP. In fact, most of that hardware innovation was really being leveraged through things like virtualization, where it allowed us to run fewer servers and lower the power consumption of those servers. But we weren't really harnessing them in order to innovate on our core business applications. So what SAP did, led by Hasso Plattner, was to take a step back and look at some of the new software innovations that could be brought to bear in conjunction with these hardware innovations. So these new ways of working with data, databases that run 100% in memory and can provide very strong in-memory computing platforms. And that's the basis of what SAP have done with HANA. But of course, HANA isn't just a fast database. Over time, since the original launch of the HANA platform in 2011-2012, SAP have built out beyond just database capabilities to a point where HANA, as a platform, contains a number of services that can be leveraged not just by SAP applications, but also by other applications you may choose to build yourself. And again, I won't talk through all of the capabilities in here, but just to highlight a few. The ability to deliver advanced analytics such as spatial and predictive directly within the memory of the appliance running the platform. And also the ability to do traditionally external tasks like delivering user experience or delivering data integration directly within the application platform. And in a break from the norm for SAP, on the right hand side of the image you're looking at here, the ability to provide open interaction and open integration to many different systems and platforms. And this again, a huge difference against SAP's traditional approach to their platforms, which many people would have characterized as perhaps being proprietary and closed off. So HANA's growth as a platform, distinct and separate from any SAP applications, meant that SAP had an innovation engine, a platform that could be used to build the next generation of business applications. And if we look at this very straightforward graph here, SAP for many years had been delivering new capabilities within the traditional ERP. You would have seen ECC with a variety of different enhancement packs over the years, with new capabilities coming through those enhancement packs. However, the reality is, if we're going to address the requirements of the next generation of businesses, the global 24/7 businesses, the businesses that don't want to be constrained by batch, the businesses that don't want to be constrained by user experience, we need to be able to deliver a different type of application. An application that can unlock more value and more capabilities than the traditional ERP can. And in order to do that, that is where HANA becomes most effective. And we've seen HANA helping SAP to transform its product set over the years. So if we go back to 2011, the initial launch of HANA as a technology. What we've seen subsequently is HANA being used under BW, under ERP, the initial release of the new style S/4HANA Finance application, originally called Simple Finance, until we get to the point now where we have S/4HANA, an all-new application code base built for the cloud but also available on premise, only able to run on HANA, with the new user experience that users demand, to be frank, and a real change in approach for delivery. So when we work from left to right along this screen and we look from 2011 to 2015, it should be clear that SAP have driven a huge amount of innovation based on HANA. And the impact of HANA continues to be felt across the other applications in the product stack from SAP. So products like SuccessFactors, Concur, Hybris, all of which are adopting HANA as their compute platform. So I would urge you, even if at the moment you are only in the early stages of planning for S/4HANA, please don't forget the positive impact that HANA could have on your existing applications, such as BW. If you're sitting there now and you're not planning on adopting S/4HANA for at least a year, but you are running BW on a non-HANA platform and you're struggling with performance or agility, then I would highly recommend you take a look at putting HANA underneath your environment. Okay, so that brings us up to date with the S/4HANA release. So what does that mean? Well, right now we have arguably 3 different flavors of S/4HANA. Number 1, the S/4HANA Cloud editions. Now there are a variety of these cloud editions available, and we will talk in a little bit more detail about them through this webinar, although of course, as I said earlier, detailed information on the different editions is not really the scope of what we're talking about this morning. But you need to be aware that there are public cloud editions, private cloud editions, versions specifically for particular industries. We also have the S/4HANA Finance 1605. Now this is what was previously the Simple Finance add-on for ERP on HANA. Now this finance add-on is still an option if you're just looking to deliver innovations on finance, but you need to be aware that the version of the finance capabilities that are in there are stuck back at the release that was current at 1605. So that's May 2016. So for most of you on this call, I suspect that the focus for you will be what we term as the main S/4HANA on-premise edition, which is currently SAP S/4HANA 1709, previously referred to as Enterprise Management, but now just referred to as SAP S/4HANA 1709 being the latest release. And when we look at these release cycles and we look at how these are being handled, you can see here the way in which SAP are delivering the on-premise products on a regular yearly innovation cycle. And you can see the cloud products being released on a quarterly innovation cycle. And you can see how the feature pack and service pack or support pack releases for on-premise are fed within that cycle. So this is something you need to get your heads around and get used to, because of this change in frequency is something that traditionally we haven't been used to with SAP. Now, if you want to know more about the detailed feature scope within the products, then tomorrow's S4 Hanathon webinar with my colleague Stephen Jerram will be diving more deeply into the particular functional scope. And of course, you can find a lot of information about this online. But the key thing to be aware of, as I mentioned earlier on, is that we have the digital core and we have add-on products that extend that, and then we have the cloud products from SAP which deliver the next generation capabilities. An example being SuccessFactors. Within the digital core now, there is only very minimal HR capabilities. The full suite is delivered through SAP SuccessFactors, SAP's market-leading public cloud HCM talent management offering. So let's touch briefly on what this new code base for S/4HANA brings with it. I wanted to focus on 3 key principles, just to make sure again that everybody is aware of what we get with S/4HANA. So let's start. We've already touched on this to a degree, the modern architecture. So historically, you could run SAP, ERP, ECC on a variety of hardware platforms with a variety of databases. And the applications were tuned for the least common denominator database. Well, that's changed now. I mentioned it briefly earlier on, but for S/4HANA now, the front end, we default to browser or to native mobile application. We have one integrated application stack, and we have a single database platform, HANA, as we mentioned earlier. We have a choice of running it on x86 or Power. And I have to be clear here, the vast majority of customers that I speak to are running on x86 or are considering x86. But if you have an existing investment in Power, then you can be comfortable that you could continue to run on the Power platform. Now, this change to a modern architecture has allowed SAP to make some significant changes to the structure of the back-end database. Now, you may say, what difference does that make? Why should I care about that? Well, the important thing here is that we can now deliver a massively simplified data model. So most of the non-core tables have been removed from the S/4HANA database schema. So we've taken out the need for aggregate tables, balance tables, all of those things. That means the database schema and the database size has massively reduced, which means less memory required for the HANA systems. So when we look at S4 versus the previous generation SAP application running on HANA, we can use significantly less memory, which means cheaper systems, which means faster startup. We also have the principle of one. So what you will see, and we'll come onto this in more detail when we talk about the simplification list, what you will see is where historically within SAP there may have been multiple ways to perform functions, that's now been reduced. So we have a principle of one in place, whereby we will not have multiple ways of delivering the same functionality. Now, all of this results in a major improvement, not only in performance, but also in management capability of the application overall. And it has some knock-on effects as well, which I just want to briefly touch on. And the first of these is that it allows you to challenge what you may see as standard business intelligence practices. So I know that many of you out there will be running systems similar to this. You will have transactional interaction with an OLTP system, a transactional processing system, and you will probably then take data from that transactional system, maybe through an ETL, extract, transform and load process, and then you'll load it in another system like a data warehouse or some kind of BI platform before you can perform your analytics. And that introduces a delay. That prevents you making quick decisions, but it also introduces multiple copies of the data and forces you to manage this process, which has additional effort and cost associated with it. Now, many customers I speak to, the bulk of the need for that chain and that process is simply to deliver operational BI, operational analytics, information about what's happening right now. We can challenge that with the HANA platform. It is possible to deliver enterprise class operational analytics directly from our transactional system with no replication, no aggregation, no post-processing required. Now, sure, if you want to do a complex enterprise-wide data warehouse and pull data together from multiple sources, then yes, you probably still want to look at a ETL process of some type. But if your main requirement is the support of operational decision making, then you no longer need to deliver this complex architecture, regardless of the volume of data that you have. And as you would expect, because we have that capability, S/4HANA introduces a range of new embedded analytic capabilities, which are built on virtual data models, which are shipped with the S/4HANA product and updated on a regular basis. So you have semantic models which allow you to directly interact and report off of transactional data within the system. Now, if you want to know more on this, we have a number of recorded webinars that we've delivered on precisely this topic, and also I expect it to be revisited in later episodes of this week's Hanathon. So that was the modern architecture. What about this new design? Well, I've often heard it said that SAP has a face that only a mother could love. And if you've not seen it, then I'm sure you will agree that the new design, Fiori 2.0, represents something that every user can be enthusiastic about getting their hands on. This new style of interface and interaction with SAP is light years away from the traditional SAP GUI interface that many customers are used to working with. The tile-based interface with live KPIs. You can see in the middle of the screenshot here the comparative annual totals KPI tile, which is driven in real time using the capabilities that we were just talking about. You can see notifications on the right hand side of the screen, the ability to personalize those, the ability to interact directly with notifications and drive transactional activity. And of course, not just on computer traditionally, but on mobile, on phone, on tablet, cross-platform, innovative, consumer-grade front-end applications. Let's take a step below that. One of the things you'll need to get familiar with as you start to work your way through this paradigm shift is the different types of screens that we deliver with the new user experience. So we start generally with the Launchpad, as I mentioned, your one spot for starting all interaction with SAP, tailored to you as an individual based on roles and delivering these card or tile-based interfaces. You then have domain-specific overview pages, perhaps a procurement page, perhaps an account receivable page, perhaps a production planning page. And then from those we can drill down into further detail pages where we can see transactional capabilities or applications that deliver analytical insight, or a blending of those two. And of course, backed up by native experiences across the core popular mobile platforms. So how do we leverage both of those things together to deliver the next generation of applications? Now, this is a workflow that you need to get used to, and certainly in tomorrow's webinar, Stephen will take you through the functional capabilities, and you will see this type of workflow. We were KPI driven to help us decide what's important in our workday, where we can simulate the impact of different resolution strategies and then take action and execute resolution in a closed loop. So we're talking about this ability to go from what looks like a KPI or an exception and drill to detail and then query transactional activities, take action and keep moving. This is a very different type of interaction to what a lot of traditional users expect on a Monday morning when they sit down in front of SAP GUI, grab that laminated sheet and start to work through the list of things that they have to do that day. So the three core principles: modern architecture, new design, and the smart business applications. This is what S/4HANA is all about. So let's just pause for a moment here and think about what we've touched on so far in this 101. So be clear, S/4HANA is the next ERP suite. It is a new product SKU. It is not an upgrade from ECC. It only runs on HANA. So you need to think about your landscape and how you will take HANA into that landscape. You should consider your position as an organization on cloud. Is it the right time for you to consider cloud ERP? These are, of course, new applications. You saw a sneak peek at the Fiori user experience. New, of course, means different, and difference means change. So you need to think about how you will adapt to those changes and how you will drive adoption through your organization. Many of the existing methods and routes that you use within ERP at the moment continue to be supported, but you cannot guarantee that they all will be. And this is something we will touch on in a lot more detail in the next section of the webinar. And if you're sitting there and you're a developer, ABAP developer, somebody who extends or amends the way that SAP ERP works in your current organization, you need to be aware that there are new tools and techniques and best practices that you need to adopt. And we'll come on and talk about those in the next section as well. So in other words, do not underestimate the impact that S/4HANA will have. So be clear, HANA as a technology can help you evolve your existing applications that you run. But S/4HANA is a new application and it needs to be treated as such. So do not think of it as a simple upgrade. You need to consider carefully how you plan for S/4HANA. Okay, so when we think about S/4HANA in our environments, how we can begin to plan and move forward to follow SAP's strategic direction. There are three things that I think you need to consider. The deployment model, we've touched on this briefly. We'll talk about it again in a moment. How you're going to actually adopt those technologies. And finally, you won't be able to do anything unless you understand how you're going to pay for it. So the business case that underpins these things is exceptionally important and cannot be left till the end. You need to consider it now. So there are three options you can choose from when you plan for S/4HANA. The first one, which most people start with and most people consider, is what we term the system conversion. So you take your existing ERP system and you convert it to an S/4HANA on-premise solution. Now, this is where many people get slightly confused and start to call this an upgrade. Now, I just want to take a moment to explain why I'm not a fan of calling this an upgrade. Yes, you are taking a version of the software, you're running through a process, and you're coming out at the other end in the new version of the software. But there is a requirement to purchase the new software. S/4HANA must be purchased. Now, there is a nominal fee to uplift your current license to the S/4HANA one, which currently runs at about 10,000 euros or so. But that means I don't call it an upgrade. I call it a conversion because you need to convert a license as you go through. The next stage, a landscape transformation. Perhaps you've got a complex landscape. Perhaps you've got many different ERP systems, not just SAP ones. In this case, you need to consolidate together those applications, and that gives you options. That means you could land in an on-premise system, but you could potentially land in a cloud system. So what does this tell us straight away? This tells us if you want to do a system conversion, from your current ERP system on-premise, option number 1, you cannot go to a cloud platform. You can only go to the on-premise. And finally, a new system implementation. Now, we'll touch on some of the complexities around the conversions and transformations through the rest of this session. But it probably won't surprise you to know that some customers look at their organization, look at their current SAP system and say, you know what? If we were starting from scratch, we wouldn't start from here. We'd implement differently. We'd take advantage of new business processes that are available in the new applications. So therefore, some customers start with the new system installation. So these are broadly the 3 options. So what effect is this having on the market? What rate of change and what adoption pace are customers looking at? Let's just take a moment to think about that. The latest figures that we saw last quarter from SAP say 700 plus, and I think we're nearing 1,000 now, live customers globally on S4HANA. Nearly 6,000 licensed customers, 3,000, over 3,000 those being in the mid-market, 2,000 plus active customer projects, covering all industries and a very, very large number of countries. And I talked briefly earlier about our experience within itelligence. I see some stats on there, I won't talk through all of these. But we're certainly seeing growing interest in our install base, and we're starting to see momentum, and I believe we've reached a tipping point. So what are most of our customers wanting to do? Are we looking at conversions? Are we looking at new installations? Are we looking at landscape transformations? Well, let's just touch on another driver behind that. Now, I apologise, this is a slightly complex diagram, but I'll talk through this and hopefully everybody will understand where we're coming from. So if you're currently running SAP ECC or ERP, you're on the left-hand side there. You're running what we call the origin code. All yellow, probably on-premise, maybe hosted for you by somebody, but the same code line. As we move across to the far right-hand side, I mentioned it earlier on, S4HANA origin code is being written for the cloud first. So the blue box on the right-hand side in the top corner is the new S4HANA origin code. That is driving the cloud editions in grey that we see there. Mentioned them earlier as well. You can move forward with your on-premise and you can attach the S4HANA Finance add-on that I talked about earlier on. And you can see that in the middle portion of the screen with this small blue add-on. As I said earlier, difficult to recommend that as a first step now because of the way in which S4HANA as a wider application has innovated and moved further on, and the fact that the S4HANA Finance add-on isn't being updated further. So what that means is most customers are looking to step through that dotted line there and move to enterprise management. And to ease that conversion, we have the ability to deliver so-called compatibility scopes to support some of your legacy operational activities which may not be supported as you expect them in the enterprise management product set. So let's be clear. If you move to a cloud solution, one of the public cloud editions, you cannot convert directly from an on-premise solution. You can only move to a private cloud version of S4, where the code base that runs is the same as the on-premise enterprise management. The version in the box, in the middle there, past the dotted line. So, what does that mean for traditional ERP? Well, traditional ERP goes out of life, currently scheduled 31st of December 2025. So you need to start planning now. Before you know it, the mainstream product that you've been using, ECC, will go out of mainstream support. So what do we need to think about when we plan for S4HANA? Cost versus benefits, always the same thing. So we've talked about one benefit, a supported platform. I'm sure none of you out there want to be running a version of SAP that will no longer be supported. But what about the costs? Well, there will be internal costs, there will be external costs, and there will, of course, be CapEx versus operational costs. So I want to go through some of that detail to help you understand the choices you need to make. So this is a high-level system conversion process. Many of you who've seen this presentation from me before will be familiar with this. We have a distinct set of stages that take us through the discovery and preparation through to the realization of a conversion. We are not in today's session going to be focusing heavily on the realization. That will come later on this week. Instead, what I want to do is focus on the first set of activities here, the discovery and prepare phase. I want you to understand the activities that you can go through to help you prepare for S4HANA. And the first thing to understand is you can do a lot of it without needing HANA in your environment. So first of all, system requirements. You can perform sizing for your S4HANA environment. You can understand how much infrastructure you will need. That will help you make decisions about your target landscape. Whether you go cloud versus on-premise, whether you want appliance or tailored data center integration, whether you want to scale up, whether you want to scale out. All of these options you can work through without having any HANA within your environment. That can also help you plan for what you need to do, because if you decide that you want on-premise HANA, then you need to be aware that the lead times can be quite long. So I would urge you immediately, if you're involved in basis within your organization, to start looking at the system requirements. Now, next up, I want to introduce you to something which is exceptionally important, the simplification list. Now, I'm not sure many of you will be familiar with this. This is an absolutely essential document that you need to get hold of and you need to review within your environment. It will help you understand the impact of the simplifications that S4HANA brings. And the latest version, 1709, 894 pages. There is also an Excel version that you can use to help you analyze. And of course, also, as I mentioned here on this slide, don't forget the new SAP readiness check and simplification list, which will help you to automate many of these activities. Maintenance planner. Make sure that your basis team are familiar with maintenance planner. It is an essential prerequisite before you can do any of the steps for the conversion to S4HANA. Next up, custom code. Now there are many documents. There's an example of one there on the right hand side, the S4HANA Custom Code Adaptation Guide. It is essential, I cannot underestimate this, it is essential that you ensure you understand your current custom code that you have in your environments. You need to get transparency on that code. There are many tools available for you. Many of them are listed on the screen here. Custom Code Lifecycle Management, Custom Development Management Cockpit, Usage and Process Logging, etc., etc. You need to make sure you review your custom code. Make sure you remove any that's no longer required. Make sure you optimize for HANA and for S4HANA. It is essential that you do those things. You have huge opportunity to improve the way that your custom code runs when you look to S4HANA. But the gotcha, some of it may not run. So this is where it's essential to get this transparency. And as I mentioned, the tools that are there can help you to do that. So the readiness check. Custom code impact with regard to reference, enhancement and modification to SAP objects. So what will happen to your custom code when you upgrade to S4HANA? the sizing that we've talked about, and recommended Fiori apps that will replace your existing transactions. And then finally, most importantly, these two areas, the simplification items that are relevant to you in your current environment, and the current business processes that are run within your system and what you need to prepare for when you move to S4. All of those capabilities have now been bound together into the SAP readiness check for S4 HANA. There's some detail there underneath where you can review this capability. We, of course, are offering service to help you run this through. Please be aware of this capability. There is a simplification item catalogue online that you can browse that will help you search and understand the impact, so you no longer have to just read the PDF or look through the Excel sheet. Please, I would urge you, take a detailed look and understand and familiarise yourself with these tools. So that helps to give you a view for some of the costs. But what about the benefits? How do we start to balance this out so that you can present to your organisation some of the clear benefits that will come with adopting S4? Well, of course, number one, attending this set of webinars this week hopefully will help you. But of course, being able to also discuss and explain this to your colleagues within your organisation, and to be able to talk about the benefits that we outlined earlier on and how they deliver new capabilities within your organisation. Covering those, being able to demonstrate, being able to proof of concept, being able to show all of those different capabilities will help you to build a case for S4 within your organisation. But you cannot make this a pure technology-driven activity. So let's look at applications for the front end. Innovations and changes. I would encourage you to seek out the Fiori Readiness Assessment, which you can find on the Fiori Apps Library online, the link provided at the bottom of the slide. This will allow you to work out which existing ERP SAP GUI type screens that you use to work out what they will be replaced by when you move forward and adopt the Fiori applications. And you can see examples of them and you can see how they'll work and how they'll be used. The next thing I'd encourage you to take a look at for building up the business case is the personalized business scenario recommendations report. You can run this for yourselves, or we can help you run it if you're one of our existing maintained customers. This will analyze the current usage of your existing SAP system and give you pointers to innovation scenarios and business scenarios that can be improved by the implementation of S4 HANA. If you have not run one of these so far, please get in touch with your account manager and request access to one of those reports. Next up, the feature scope description. This is what Stephen will be talking about in more detail tomorrow. The latest version, this is a slightly old screenshot, 1709. There is a full PDF that gives you all of the details of everything that's in the product. So please be aware of that document and take a look at that document. If you have a more complex environment, so you're not just running ERP, and you want to understand in more detail some of the high-level pointers for your transformation journey, SAP have launched the Transformation Navigator. I would encourage you to take a look at this. We're using it with a number of our customers already to help them understand the options and the opportunities available to them as they look to the new SAP technologies. Again, the link is provided at the bottom of the screen. So, costs and benefits. I mentioned earlier on, if you're going to put together a business case for S4, you need to consider both. And unfortunately, it's not straightforward. So when we think about the costs, there is a software license implication. In order to obtain S4 HANA, you have to pay a nominal flat fee. You also have to get HANA within your environment. Now, do you want to do that as a perpetual license, Or do you want to do that as a subscription license? That leads to the question of what your infrastructure is. Do you want to go on-prem or off-prem? And if you go off-prem, do you want to be hosted or do you want to go for cloud? Do you want to go for SAP private cloud or public cloud? Or, like many of our customers, do you want to look at the hyperscale providers, where we're working with customers to look at Amazon, to look at Azure, and to look at Google? And do you understand your readiness? Do you understand what it's going to take for you to move to S4? There's a lot of detail there. We can help you with that detail. Likewise, from the benefits side, there are a range of innovations clearly that are available. This is a next generation application. It brings many new innovations. There are some tools to help you understand. My view, it's much easier to build that understanding if you see a detailed run through of the applications. Stay tuned for the rest of this week and you will see those detailed run throughs. And of course, we're more than happy to come and see you and talk to you on site as well. I wanted to leave with you before we begin to summarize an approach for value discovery around S4. Now, clearly this is a methodology that we use and that we deliver with our customers, but many of the inputs to it are things that you can access for yourself. So feel free to use this as a structure if you wish to drive through your conversations, but of course feel free to reach out if you'd like us to help you further. And please don't forget that the innovations that you can deliver, yes, there are platform innovations, yes, there are back-end innovations, but many of the innovations are line of business innovations. So you need to be talking carefully to your line of business experts to make sure that you clearly understand the implications of moving to HANA and the opportunities that S4 HANA will present for you. Okay, so last few minutes, let's summarize what we've talked about today. So our view, very much within itelligence, was that even at 1610 and 1611, S4 HANA was ready for prime time. What we're seeing now with the innovations coming through in 1709 only reinforce that for us. We have net new customers who are choosing the latest release of S4 HANA as their new ERP solution. There is no doubt that functionally, feature-wise, it is capable of delivering a very wide scope of capabilities. But you shouldn't underestimate the preparation or effort that's required to build a business case. This is not simple or straightforward. You need to approach it carefully. As I said, greenfield implementations are popular. We have a number of customers who have implemented SAP many, many years ago and are taking a fresh look at what they're doing with ERP and starting again with S4. Does that mean you start completely fresh? No, it doesn't. Clearly, you can build on learnings, build on things you've done before, but many customers are wanting to take that greenfield approach. However, look, it is possible to do conversions, and importantly, the innovations can be delivered phased. So you do not have to flick a binary switch and have everybody using the new interfaces if you don't want to. You can phase those things through, okay? You can deliver the new interfaces as and when you need them, and even if you want to, keep a number of users still using SAP GUI. That is possible to do. And the final thing I wanted to say here is that we are definitely seeing momentum and interest in people wanting to move SAP off-premise. And I've mentioned the vast range of things that could mean. That could mean true public cloud software, as in the SAP S/4HANA public cloud editions, but that's unlikely if you are an existing complex customer. You can go to private cloud, both the itelligence private cloud or the SAP private cloud, or you could choose to run your ERP, your licenses, on one of the hyperscale providers. And we've already mentioned Amazon, Microsoft, Google. We're engaged delivering that with existing customers. So if you want to know more about that, then please don't hesitate to ask. So 3 big questions for you to think about following this webinar. What are the challenges facing your organization? think carefully about both internal and external. Is your organization embarking on digital transformation activities? If so, is your SAP implementation part of that? If not, why not? Is your current implementation right for you? How is it truly working for you? Do you understand the custom code that you have? Can you describe and cost your personal S/4HANA roadmap journey? I've mentioned it many times today. It's important that you are able to do that. So I'll just review some of the questions that have been put up here while I show you the list of upcoming activities that are going on here. Just taking a little look at the questions. Okay, somebody questioning here about S4. Okay, so the costs. Yeah, clearly there are two things you need to do. You need to get S4 HANA into your environment. That's a flat fee to obtain that if you're an existing SAP customer. But you do, of course, also need to license HANA itself. And that's done normally through so-called HSAV, which is a percentage of your overall SAP software investment. So for those of you who handle SAP licensing at the moment, I'm sure you'll be familiar with that. But that's the way that you do it. So typically you have the new license itself, S/4HANA license, and then you have the percentage to acquire HANA in your environment if you don't already have it. Another quick question. Do the old tables still exist and get populated with data for third-party systems to query? Okay, the simplification that's going on is removing the old tables. Some of them still exist because simplification isn't quite complete in those areas. Where they have been removed, they've been removed by database views, which old applications can still utilize. So therefore, your legacy applications, reports, etc., will still work, but you should, as with any other custom code, review that before moving forward, because you may have a better, smarter way of doing that. What are the KPI-driven visualization tools you're using in screenshots, and are there any additional license impacts for using the built-in S4 feature set? No, all of the inbuilt KPIs and BI capabilities are included with the core S4 licensing, and I think all of the screenshots I showed were core functions. You can, of course, extend that using the wider business objects tool set or other BI tools if you have them. Licensing may be required for those other tools, but the inbuilt KPI stuff, which I showed, is all included. With traditional ERP on AnyDB, we are all clear on how to stay supported with a core ECC6 version on a current OS. Can ITELLI give clarity on how this is changed in S4 on-prem? What do customers need to do to stay supported? Are there now further considerations around HANA-DB version and S4, SPS, FPS, etc.? Okay, right. Complicated question that does change, and because this is a recording webinar, I will of course recommend that you take a look at help.sap.com. But at this point in time, S4 1709 on premise requires HANA 2.0, and all of the future versions will be HANA 2.x. As far as on-premise ECC6, yes, you can go to HANA 1.x, but S4 on-prem now is version 2 of HANA. Hope that makes sense. Like I say, if you want to check any more supported platform information, I would recommend you take a look at the detail on help.sap.com. One more question. What happens to the compatibility pack items at the end of 2025? Okay, do they just stop working? Honest answer, I don't know. That depends on what SAP do between now and then. The current ruling is that compatibility packs end at 2025 as well. That would mean, I guess, technically they'd probably work, but the license to use them would expire. I expect a lot more information coming out on that over the next year or so. One more, is Business Suite on HANA still a safe bet for the more cautious customer who has a lot of custom code? Complex question. Yes, it is a safer, quicker move, but S4 is really looking like a very robust solution now, and I think most customers should be considering that, particularly as we get closer to the end of life around Suite on HANA. Okay, so I think that's all of the questions that were asked. One quick thing to leave you with before we wrap up. I asked you in the poll at the beginning of the webinar if you're interested in attending our conference. We're changing venue for next year on to bigger and better things. We'll be running at the QE2 Conference Centre in the heart of Westminster, Wednesday 23rd of May 2018. There's a link at the bottom of the screen there for you to register. That's bit.ly/itelli2018. Please feel free to register. I will be there along with many other of my colleagues from itelli, both in the UK and wider afield. And I'm pleased to announce that we'll have the return of Mr. Timo Elliott from SAP as well, who'll be coming along to deliver a session for us. So if you like the sound of that, then please register for our conference 2018. You would be more than welcome. Okay, so a quick reminder, we have the rest of the Hanathon to come through this week. Tomorrow, deeper dive and review of functional scope. Wednesday, the program management perspective. Thursday, how to get finance ready for S4, because there are a lot of changes you need to make in finance. And then finally on Friday, my colleague John Ward delivering top tips for planning your technical migration to HANA. So that's one for the basis guys out there. If you want to know a lot more about how to plan for the adoption of HANA in your environment. Okay, so I think we're just about on the hour there. So I'd like to thank you all very much for attending. Please, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on the details given there. This has been the stage 1 of the 2017 itelligence S4 Hanathon. I've been Andy Steer. I'm the itelligence UK CTO, and I thank you very much for attending today's webinar.